My best friend demanded 50% of my $12 million company sale for being my emotional support, so I offered her exactly what she gave me, nothing. Everyone always assumes business fights start in conference rooms, over contracts or numbers or some fancy legal file. Mine started in a parking lot behind a taco truck, sunburned, sweaty, and holding a lemonade that I instantly wished was something stronger. Because that's where Riley cornered me for the first time and said something that would eventually change everything. I want my half. Half. 50%. Of my company. The one I spent 11 years building from nothing. At first, I laughed. I genuinely thought she was joking. Riley had a history of dramatic entrance lines, and we'd known each other long enough that nothing surprised me anymore. But her face didn't match her tone. It was serious, cold, and strangely rehearsed. Half of what? I asked. She crossed her arms. Of the sale. The whole thing. We both know you didn't build that business alone. That was the moment I realized she wasn't joking. The truth was simple. I built a small online apparel shop out of my garage, slowly grew it into a brand, hired a team, opened a warehouse, and after years of collapsing at my desk and surviving off caffeine and stubbornness, I finally had an offer from a large retailer to buy the whole company. Riley. She'd be my friend, yes. She helped me pack orders during the early chaos. She came with me to pop-up markets. She took pictures for Instagram sometimes, and she talked me out of quitting more than once. But she never owned shares. She wasn't a partner. She didn't invest. She didn't sign paperwork. She never once sat in a meeting with a supplier or distributor or lawyer. But now she wanted half of my $12.4 million sale. Riley, I said carefully, trying not to show the shock crawling under my skin, you helped me. I've never denied that. But helping and co-owning are not the same thing. She scoffed. You promised me we'd do everything 50-50. You said it years ago. I blinked. What? When? That night your first package sold, she said sharply. You opened champagne at 1 a.m. and told me we were in this together. Forever partners, remember? I did remember that night. Barely. It was one of those wild, messy, overly emotional nights that come after weeks of stress and zero sleep. I had opened my first online shop, and someone in Ohio bought a custom tote bag. I was deliriously happy. I said a lot of things I don't even remember. But even then, I didn't mean legal partnership. I meant emotional support. I meant thanks for being here while I lose my mind building this thing. I never thought someone would use that moment as a contract. Riley, I said, gentler now, that wasn't a literal business agreement. Her jaw tightened so hard I thought she might crack a tooth. So now you're pretending you never made that promise. I didn't even know you thought it was a promise, I whispered. She stared at me like I'd betrayed her in the most personal way possible. I was there, she said, voice rising. All those late nights. All those weekends. Every time you cried. Every time you almost quit. You said we'd win together. Now you're selling for millions and cutting me out. I'm not cutting you out, I said, stepping closer. You're my friend. I've always appreciated your help. But I can't give you half of something I built, legally or financially. That's not how companies work. But she wasn't listening anymore. Her face shifted, anger folding into grief, grief folding into something darker. You owe me, she said quietly. And if you don't do what's right, I'll make sure everyone knows what really happened. All of it. A cold wave rolled down my spine. What does that mean? She didn't answer. She just turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with melting lemonade and the sudden dread of a storm I didn't see coming. That night, the first post went up. A long, emotional rant on her social media, telling thousands of her followers that she built a brand for 11 years and got thrown out the moment it became valuable. My name wasn't in the post, but the timing was obvious, and the comments started piling in. You deserve half. People love to use friends. Take her to court. Expose her. I felt sick. The next day, Riley showed up at the warehouse unannounced, walking straight past my employees, announcing loudly that she was there to collect her things. She didn't have things, she'd never worked there. But she made enough noise that my team started whispering. That was the beginning of the unraveling. Emails from former pop-up event people started trickling in. Hey, Riley reached out. Did you two have a falling out? Is everything okay? I thought you two co-owned the brand. Then someone forwarded me a screenshot of a private message Riley sent to a vendor, claiming I'd stolen her company and profited off her creativity. It was like watching a fire spread in slow motion. Mara, my attorney, the same one who would later guide me through the chaos, told me the truth no one wants to hear. Your friend believes her version. And people who believe their own stories are the most dangerous ones. She was right. But I still thought, stupidly, that maybe Riley would calm down. Maybe it was just hurt feelings. Maybe a conversation would fix things. Until 2 days later, when I walked into my office and found a letter taped to my chair. A legal letter. From Riley, claiming she was entitled to 50% of my business. And threatening to sue. My knees nearly gave out. Everything blurred. The walls, the desk, even the damn printer. I sat down and just stared at the letter, unable to process how fast everything had spiraled. 11 years building something. 1 week watching it fall apart. All because my best friend believed a fantasy she created. But the worst part, this wasn't even close to the final explosion. Because Riley didn't just threaten me. She planned something bigger. A move that nearly destroyed my company, my reputation, and the truth itself. The day the letter arrived, the world around me didn't immediately collapse. It leaned, tilted, shifted in that slow, eerie way buildings sway before they fall. The envelope sat on my desk like a dare, thin, pale, almost harmless looking. But inside it was a threat that felt more intimate than any lawsuit I'd ever dealt with, a betrayal written in legal language. Riley had hired an attorney. She was claiming that she was the co-creator of my business, that she had put in equal labor, and therefore deserved equal compensation from the sale. I read it twice, 3 times, 4, and each time my stomach tightened a little more. She wasn't bluffing. I called Mara immediately. She came to the office within an hour, heels clicking sharply across the concrete floor, her face carved with calm competence. She picked up the letter, skimmed it, then exhaled slowly. Well, she said, she's serious. I slumped into my chair. But none of this is true. She didn't help build the company. Not in the way she's claiming. I know, she said. But truth isn't enough. It's what she can prove versus what you can prove. And more importantly, it's about what she believes she can make other people believe. A shiver crawled up my spine. You think she'll actually try to ruin me? Mara paused. Her silence was louder than any answer. Let's begin with documents, she said. Old contracts, tax filings, formation paperwork, employee logs, anything that clearly shows she wasn't a partner. I pointed her to a digital folder, one I'd kept updated since day one. I wasn't sloppy. I had records of every decision I'd made, every expense I'd paid, every agreement I'd signed. Mara clicked through them with the precision of someone who trusted evidence more than emotion. This is good, she said eventually. But she's not going to attack your paperwork. She's going to attack your story, your image, your character, your credibility. She already has, I whispered. Mara nodded grimly. Then brace yourself. Because this is only the beginning. The online posts escalated quickly. Riley stopped hinting and started lying outright. She posted old photos of us from flea markets and early pop-up events, captioning them with things like, where it all began. Before I was cut out. Before my hard work was stolen. Then another. Don't let people rewrite history just because they have money. Thousands of people liked them. Hundreds commented. They didn't know she'd been there as a friend, not as a co-owner. They didn't know she'd offered emotional support but nothing legal, financial, or official. They didn't know I'd nearly bankrupted myself trying to get the company off the ground while she spent most nights out partying. To them, the story was simple. Small creator helps build a brand, gets pushed aside when money enters the picture. It was compelling, sympathetic, addicting to believe. And Riley leaned into that narrative like a performer finally receiving the applause she'd always craved. She messaged my vendors, telling them she was being cheated. She reached out to small business owners we'd met years ago, rewriting our past into a partnership that had never existed. One woman, an event coordinator from a street market we'd worked at 5 years ago, emailed me directly. I'm sorry about what happened between you two. I always thought you were equal partners. Equal partners. Those words made my throat tighten. Riley's version of the truth was spreading faster than mine. Then came the interview. I didn't know about it until a customer forwarded it to me, some small podcast that focused on creators and entrepreneurship. Riley appeared on it wearing a soft yellow sweater, wiping tears theatrically as she told the host her story. She promised me we'd always split everything 50-50, she said, voice trembling. I believed her. For 11 years, I supported her dream. I stayed up with her. I worked every event. I helped build the brand. Then she sold the company and didn't give me anything. I don't understand how someone can be so cold. I watched, speechless, as she dabbed her eyes with a tissue. The host looked furious on her behalf. You deserve something, Riley. That's not right. Have you considered legal action? I didn't want to, she said, shaking her head. But she forced me. She won't even return my calls. That was the part that made something sharp twist inside me. Because she had stopped calling me. And the calls she did make were full of threats. But nobody watching that interview would know that. They saw a betrayed friend. A soft-spoken creator fighting for justice. Not a woman rewriting 11 years of history so she could cash out on my success. When I showed Mara the interview, she rubbed her temples. This is worse than I thought. What do we do? I asked, voice cracking. We stay calm, she said. We build our proof. We respond legally, not emotionally. And under no circumstances do you post anything online. But people are believing her. I know, she said, eyes steady. But social media is temporary. The courts are not. I exhaled shakily. It just feels like she's winning. Mara's voice softened. She's winning attention. You're winning truth. They are not the same. Maybe she was right, but the attention Riley was getting was dangerous. The more people believed her, the more confident she became. Confident enough to cross lines I never thought she'd cross. Because it wasn't just posts or interviews. It was the next step she took. The one that made my company look like it was built on a lie. And made Emmy look like a thief. A step designed to destroy my reputation entirely. Riley hadn't even started the real attack yet. Because the next move she made wasn't emotional, it was strategic. And it nearly cost me the company I spent my life building. The first sign that Riley was escalating came through a marketing email, one I didn't send. It was 6:14 a.m. when I opened my laptop and saw 4 new notifications from customers confused about a partnership announcement between my company and a supposed co-founder. At first, I thought it was a glitch or spam. But then I opened the email they were referring to. My lungs emptied. It wasn't spam. It was a press release written to look official, formatted exactly like the ones I'd sent over the years, but filled with lies. At the top, in bold black type, were the words, Founder Marina Ellis and co-founder Riley Grant announced transition of brand ownership. My chest tightened. Co-founder. That single word changed everything. It wasn't just a claim anymore. It was written as fact. Riley had crafted an entire narrative, dates, events, quotes attributed to me, even a timeline of shared milestones. She had sent this fabricated announcement to suppliers, influencers, customers, and several small business newsletters we'd worked with over the years. The email looked real enough that people believed it instantly. By 8 a.m., 15 different Instagram stories had reposted the news. By 10 a.m., vendors were emailing me congratulations on my sale and asking why they hadn't been informed earlier. Riley had taken her narrative and branded it as truth. I forwarded the email to Mara, hands shaking. She called within seconds. This isn't just slander, she said. This is impersonation and business interference. And if her lawyers sent this, they're committing fraud. I whispered, what do we do? She instructed me to take screenshots, save headers, archive everything. Then she said something that made my stomach churn. She's not doing this alone. Someone helped her draft that. It was too legally styled. The idea that Riley had support, someone advising her, fueling her, made the situation feel suddenly bigger and far more dangerous. The next blow struck 4 hours later when a supplier declined one of our renewal contracts. The message was short and painfully polite. Until this ownership dispute is resolved, we prefer to avoid involvement. Ownership dispute. Riley had taken her story to them too. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from people wanting clarification, each question tightening the pressure in my chest. Some sounded sympathetic, others suspicious, a few were downright hostile. I answered none of them. Mara had drilled that rule into me. Silence keeps you safe, she said. Anything you say publicly will be twisted against you. But being silent while your reputation is torn apart is a different kind of pain, one that builds slowly, like bruising under the skin. By late afternoon, a new problem emerged. An employee from my warehouse approached me nervously, holding her phone. "Is this true?" she asked quietly. She showed me a screenshot of a post Riley had made in a private business group. The post claimed she had been pushed out of a company she helped lead for a decade, and that she was preparing legal action for stolen wages and ownership rights. I could barely breathe. Stolen wages. She wasn't an employee. She had never been on payroll. She had never even filled out a tax form. But now she was claiming not only ownership, but employment history. And she wasn't just posting. She was gathering sympathy, collecting allies, and creating doubt about my leadership within my own staff. I reassured the employee quietly, told her the claims were false, and asked her not to engage. But even as she nodded, I could see uncertainty lingering in her eyes. It only got worse when an investor called. He was calm but concerned, asking, "Will this impact the sale?" That question alone nearly stopped my heart. The potential buyer, Braden and Lane Retail Group, had been vetting the company for weeks. Their interest was genuine and their offer solid. But the last thing a corporation wants is drama. Riley's actions weren't just irritating anymore. They were dangerous. She had the power to ruin the sale entirely. That evening, Mara and I sat in my office going through the hundreds of screenshots I had collected. She read them one by one, jotting notes, organizing them into a timeline. Then she paused at one message. Riley had privately texted a vendor, "I'd be happy to guide you through the transition once my lawsuit is finalized." I was the real force behind the brand anyway. Mara placed the phone down slowly. "She's behaving like someone convinced she has nothing to lose," she said. "People like that are unpredictable." I stared at my hands. "She believes her own story," I whispered. "She really believes I stole something from her." Mara nodded. "That makes her more dangerous, not less." The next morning, we filed a cease and desist letter. It was direct, detailed, and forceful. It outlined every lie she had spread, every false claim she was pushing, and every legal line she had crossed. We sent it to her attorney, expecting silence, or maybe a defensive email. Instead, we received something none of us anticipated. Her lawyer responded by doubling down. He insisted Riley had verbal evidence of partnership agreements, witnesses from early events, and records proving she worked informally for the brand. It was smoke. Nothing real. Nothing substantial. But enough to make things complicated. Then came the moment that changed the entire tone of the battle. That afternoon, a former pop-up market organizer emailed us a copy of a document Riley had sent her, something Riley claimed was proof. It was a blurry photo of a notebook page with the words, "Business plan, M&R partnership" written in thick marker, dated 11 years ago. My jaw dropped. I recognized the notebook instantly. It was mine, a journal I'd scribbled in during my first year. But the handwriting underneath my title, Partnership, was not mine. And the date written in the corner wasn't even accurate. Riley had faked documentation. When I showed the photo to Mara, she stared at it for a long moment before speaking. "This isn't desperation anymore," she said quietly. "This is fabrication. And people who fabricate don't stop after one attempt." She was right. Riley had escalated from lies to forged evidence. And if she was willing to forge one piece, she could forge more. Emails. Agreements. Anything. That was the moment I realized Riley wasn't simply fighting for money. She was fighting for a narrative, one where she was the hero, the victim, the co-creator. And now that she had convinced herself it was true, she was ready to burn everything down to protect that version. But the real shock came 2 days later, when someone from my team discovered what Riley had done behind the scenes. Something far more dangerous than posts or emails or fake documents. Something capable of undoing the entire sale. Because Riley's next move wasn't online. It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't even a forged notebook page. It was a coordinated attack designed to hit the company where it was most vulnerable, its future. The discovery came from someone I didn't expect, Noah, my operations manager, a quiet, methodical man who never raised his voice above a steady hum. 2 days after Riley sent that forged notebook image, he knocked on my office door looking pale. When he sat down, he didn't start with a greeting. He simply said, "There's something you need to see." He turned his laptop toward me, and what I saw made my pulse spike. It was an email draft sitting in our brand's outgoing server queue. One scheduled for automatic release in 48 hours. A message addressed to every major supplier, warehouse partner, and retailer in our network. The subject line read, "Ownership Transition Clarification." At first glance, I assumed it was another one of Riley's fake press releases. But then Noah clicked the body of the message, and my breath left my lungs. It was written using our company's official tone, our signature format, our standard footer. It referenced a pending legal dispute between founding partners Marina Ellis and Riley Grant. It claimed we were in the process of negotiating equity and that certain obligations may not be honored during the transition. It encouraged suppliers to pause all new contracts until the dispute was resolved. The meaning was clear. If this message went out, it would paralyze the company overnight. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Who wrote this? Noah swallowed. It came from an internal login. Someone used a staff account, but not one of ours. A chill crawled up my spine. He continued. The account originated from an external IP. Someone with access, or someone who stole access, logged into our communications platform. I leaned back slowly, feeling the weight of dread pressing down on my chest. Riley didn't just lie. She had gotten inside the system. Whether she guessed a password, hacked an account, or convinced someone to give her access, I didn't know. But this message wasn't a rumor anymore. It wasn't a social media stunt. It was direct sabotage aimed at collapsing my company from the inside. Noah clicked through logs, showing timestamps. It was drafted late last night, around 2:17 a.m. His eyes flicked up. Who would be awake then? There was only one answer. I felt anger and disbelief twist together. Riley had crossed a line I didn't even think she understood existed. Because if that email had gone out, the buyer could have backed out, leaving me with a company whose partnerships were frozen, whose credibility was shattered, and whose operational standing was in question. She wasn't fighting for what she believed she deserved anymore. She was trying to weaken the company so deeply that my sale fell apart, and then she could claim I ruined her chance at receiving a share. A twisted strategy, and one that almost worked. Mara arrived 30 minutes after I called her, still in her driving coat, hair windblown, expression deadly sharp. She read the draft, scrolled through the server logs, then exhaled long and slow. "This is no longer a civil issue," she said. "This is interference with business operations. This is cyber intrusion. This is criminal." Hearing those words out loud hit me with a strange mix of relief and horror. Because she was right. There were legal lines Riley couldn't argue her way out of. Evidence-based lines. And she had crossed straight over them. "We need to secure everything," Mara said. She instructed Noah to lock the server, change passwords, and require two-factor authentication on every internal system. She asked him to trace any remaining access points. "Document every detail," she added. "The prosecutor will need this." The prosecutor. That was when I realized how far this had gone, and how far it would have to go to stop. While Noah worked, Mara sat across from me. "I need to prepare you for something," she said gently. "This will get worse before it gets better." I swallowed. She's already sabotaging my company. What more could she do? Mara didn't soften her answer. People who rewrite the past rarely accept reality. And when they feel cornered, they escalate. She wasn't wrong. Because the email wasn't the only thing Riley had been orchestrating. Later that afternoon, we received a call from Braden and Lane, the corporation planning to buy the brand. The executive's tone was careful but distant. "We received concerning information," he said. My heart dropped. Information about the brand having a co-founder who was not disclosed in our negotiations. He paused. "And we've been told there's a legal dispute." My throat tightened. "None of that is true. There is no co-founder dispute. She was never part of the business. I understand your position, he said. But image matters. Stability matters. And we need reassurance the company is legally secure before proceeding. Mara took the phone, discussing terms, sending documentation, clarifying facts. Her voice was steady. Mine wouldn't have been. When she hung up, she sighed heavily. We still have a chance. But they are rattled. And that's exactly what Riley wanted. That evening, exhausted and angry and emotionally scraped raw, I sat alone in my office after everyone else left. The warehouse lights buzzed quietly above me. I stared at the walls that had taken me over a decade to build, walls that held sweat, long nights, reinvention, stubborn belief. And now, somehow, it all felt fragile. Riley had rewritten history. She had forged evidence. She infiltrated my system. And now, she had nearly unraveled the entire sale with a single click. I rubbed my face with both hands, trying to steady my breathing. Mara's warning echoed in my mind. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I didn't want to believe that. Until the next morning, when my receptionist came rushing into my office holding a thick envelope. She whispered, "You need to see this. Right now." I tore it open. Inside were printed screenshots of private conversations from my phone, messages I had never sent to Riley. Messages implying I had agreed to give her equity years ago, that I had promised her ownership, that I had invited her to join our business as an official partner. Except I never sent those texts. And they weren't from my number. They were faked. And she was preparing to present them as evidence. Because Riley wasn't just lying anymore. She was fabricating an entire digital history. And she was ready to bring those fake receipts straight into court. For years, I believed the worst thing someone could do to you was lie about you. I was wrong. The worst thing someone can do is manufacture a version of your life that never existed, and then convince themselves it's real. That was exactly what Riley had done. The envelope with the printed screenshots sat on my desk like a trap. The messages inside were clean, formatted, and convincing enough that someone who didn't know my writing style, or my phone number, might actually believe them. The conversations showed me promising Riley 30% equity, acknowledging her as a silent partner, and thanking her for helping grow our brand from the beginning. I felt the urge to tear them to pieces, to throw them across the room, to scream. But I didn't move. I stood there frozen, staring at the pages while my pulse pounded in my ears. My receptionist, Claire, hovered uncertainly outside my office door, clearly shaken. "These were hand-delivered," she said softly. "No return address. Just dropped off at the front desk." I nodded and dismissed her gently, then sank into my chair. The room felt suddenly smaller, and for a moment I couldn't catch my breath. I knew Riley had crossed lines before, twisting stories, bending truth, performing online for sympathy, but forging digital conversations was something different. This was premeditated. This was strategic. And this was dangerous. I sent the images to Mara immediately. She called within seconds. "They're falsified," she said, not even posing it as a question. But she's not doing this blindly. She's preparing for discovery, preparing to submit this as proof, and she's hoping it will intimidate you into settlement. "I'm not settling," I said, though the tremor in my voice told a different story. "I know," she replied. "But she's assuming most people will. Especially when a fabricated trail looks cleaner than the real one. We need to stay ahead of her." Over the next hour, Mara guided me through steps to secure my devices, cloud backups, and message logs. We documented everything, including timestamps, encryption keys, and software data showing that the fake screenshots couldn't have come from my phone. But even as we collected proof, one heavy truth settled over me. Riley wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to rewrite 11 years of history into a story where she was the victim of a ruthless betrayal. And a small part of the public already believed her. That afternoon, Noah called me back into the operations room. Another problem had surfaced. Someone, likely Riley or someone assisting her, had created a social media account impersonating me. They were using my name, my brand's old logo, and even my writing style mimicked through AI. On that fake profile were posts admitting to exploiting Riley, posts claiming I was looking forward to negotiating a settlement, posts implying the sale was unstable due to unresolved internal disputes. Each post was carefully crafted, and some had already circulated online. "This is identity manipulation," Noah said. "She's trying to make you contradict yourself." I rubbed a hand over my face. "How many people have seen these?" He hesitated. "Thousands." The number made something in my stomach coil painfully. My business had always relied on trust, transparency, a connection to the people who bought from us. Riley understood that deeply, because she had been close enough to see how important that trust was. And now she was using that knowledge against me. As Noah and I worked to report and remove the impersonation accounts, Mara stepped into the office with a stack of printouts. "There's more," she said, her voice tight. She laid down 3 pages. They were emails, fake ones, sent from an address designed to look like mine. The messages were dated from years ago and implied private discussions about splitting profits with Riley. They were sloppy in a few places, phrasing I'd never use, a signature that wasn't mine, but clean enough that someone who wanted to believe her would overlook the discrepancies. "She's creating a paper trail," Mara said. "One she plans to present as long-term evidence of shared ownership. But she's never been part of the business," I whispered. "Truth doesn't matter to her anymore," Mara replied. "Only the story she's chosen." That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my office again. I turned off the lights and listened to the soft hum of the warehouse fans. The building was usually comforting: concrete floors, high ceilings, the scent of cardboard and fabric. It had been my sanctuary for years. Now it felt like a battleground. The sale of the company was already fragile. Braden and Lane had requested an additional meeting to discuss public clarity and brand stability. Those phrases made my insides twist. They were corporate language for doubt. And once a corporation doubts you, the investment disappears. I found myself replaying every memory with Riley. Every late night, every conversation, every moment of support she'd given in the early years. Maybe that was why her betrayal felt so personal. Because she hadn't been a stranger trying to scam me. She had been someone who sat beside me on the floor packing boxes at midnight. Someone who cheered me on during my worst creative failures. Someone who told me she was proud of me. But somewhere along the way, pride turned into resentment. Support turned into expectation. And expectation turned into entitlement. The hardest part to accept was that she didn't see herself as the villain. In her mind, she was reclaiming something she believed she had earned. As I sifted through the day's evidence, I came across one thing that made my blood run cold. A note from a former intern who had reached out privately. She wrote, "Riley contacted me and asked if I remembered her being part of the leadership team. She wanted me to say yes." I stayed at the message a long time. Riley wasn't just rewriting documents. She was rewriting memories, recruiting people to validate her version. And if she could find even one person willing to say they remembered her as a partner, she could spin that into doubt. But none of this prepared me for what came next. Because the next move Riley made wasn't digital. It wasn't a forged screenshot. It wasn't an online post or a fake account. It was something far more dangerous. The moment she stepped out of the online world and brought her battle directly into my physical life. Because the day she showed up at my office unannounced, she didn't come to talk, negotiate, or apologize. She came with a threat powerful enough to jeopardize the entire sale and my safety. The day Riley showed up at my office, I knew something was wrong before I even saw her. It was the silence. My building was never quiet during work hours. Someone was always printing shipping labels, moving inventory, or chatting in the hallway. But that afternoon, when I walked back from a meeting with Noah, the warehouse felt frozen. People stood still, eyes fixed on the front lobby where a familiar figure paced in tight circles, her hair disheveled, her face pale with fury and something more unsettling, determination. Riley. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't allowed to be there. She had been explicitly instructed to avoid my workplace while legal proceedings were ongoing. But there she was, pacing like a fuse ready to ignite. When she turned and saw me, she broke into a tense smile that didn't reach her eyes. "There she is," she said loudly, drawing attention from employees who immediately pretended not to listen. "The woman who ruined my life." I stopped a safe distance away, grounding my voice. "You need to leave. You can't be here." She laughed. "Oh, trust me, I can. And I will. I have every right to talk to you." "You don't," I said firmly. And you know you don't. Her jaw tightened. You think you can hide behind lawyers and letters and pretend I don't matter? You think you can sell the company without acknowledging what I'd built with you? A familiar burn rose in my chest. Riley, we've been through this. You didn't build. She cut me off with a sharp, almost frantic gesture. Don't you dare say it. Don't you dare pretend I wasn't there. I have proof. I have documentation. I have conversations. Fabricated ones, I said coldly. Her eyes fled. They're not fabricated. The tension in the room sharpened. Employees hovered near their desks, pretending to work but clearly listening, nervous. Noah stepped into the hallway, posture stiff, just close enough to intervene but cautious enough not to escalate. Riley stepped closer. I want my share. 50%. Or I'll go public with everything. Every message. Every conversation. Every notebook page. Every late-night call. I will tell everyone what you really are. I held her gaze. Threats won't change the truth, and you're not getting half of something you didn't build. For a moment, her expression softened, not in remorse, but disbelief, like she couldn't understand why I didn't simply give in. Then her face hardened again. You're going to regret this, she whispered. I mean that. Then she reached into her bag. Noah lunged forward, stepping between us instinctively. My breath caught, but Riley didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a folder, a thick, overstuffed folder bulging with printouts, photos, and documents. She shoved it toward me. This, she said, is everything I'm submitting to the court. Everything that proves I was your partner from the beginning. I didn't take it. Noah did, glancing through the stack while keeping his body angled protectively. His face darkened with every page. This is all fake, he murmured under his breath. All altered. Riley heard him anyway. It's not fake. It's my truth. My truth. Not the truth. Her truth. That was the moment I truly understood her. Riley wasn't lying in the traditional sense. In her mind, truth wasn't determined by facts. It was determined by feelings. She believed she had given me years of emotional labor, and she wanted real compensation for that emotional investment. She believed she had earned a share of my success, and because she believed it, she was willing to reshape reality to match. Noah held up one page. It was a fake contract dated 8 years ago. The logo was my old one, but the signature, my supposed signature, was wrong in ways that would be obvious to anyone who knew my writing. The lines were trembling, inconsistent. But to those who wanted to believe her story, it might pass. You forged this? Noah asked bluntly. Riley didn't even blink. It's not forging when it's what should have happened. My breath left my lungs in a single, painful exhale. That sentence was the clearest window into her mind I had ever been given. She wasn't faking evidence to trick a system. She was faking evidence to correct reality, to align it with her belief that the universe owed her something. I straightened. You need to leave now, or we will call security. You should be careful, she snapped. People are already talking. Brands are talking. Buyers are watching. How do you think the company will look when they hear the full story? It'll look like someone is trying to profit off a friendship they twisted into a contract, I replied. Her expression curdled with hatred. You are ungrateful. And you are out of control. Noah stepped forward. The police have been called, he said calmly, though I doubted he had dialed yet. But the warning worked. Riley backed away, breathing heavily, clutching her folder like it was a lifeline. This isn't over, she said again, her voice low and trembling. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. You're the one creating lies, I said softly. She shook her head almost violently. No, I'm creating justice. With that, she turned and stormed out, her footsteps echoing through the building. When the door closed behind her, the room let out a collective breath. Employees exchanged looks, fearful, unsettled. I leaned against my desk, fighting the urge to collapse. Noah placed the folder on my desk. You need to lock your doors from now on, he said. She's not stable. He wasn't wrong. But the real problem wasn't the forged evidence or the fake accounts or the hacked server. It was that Riley wasn't finished. Because the next place she took her version of the truth wasn't social media and it wasn't my office. It was the one place where lies become legal ammunition. Because the day Riley stepped into the courtroom, she didn't come with just forged documents. She came with a strategy designed to make the judge believe she was the co-founder all along. The morning Riley showed up at the courthouse, the air felt different, heavy, electric. She didn't enter quietly or humbly. She strode in like a warrior claiming territory, folder in hand, eyes sharp, jaw set. Every step echoed through the marble hall as if the building itself was warning me. Noah walked beside me, tense, hands clenched, but I was the one who felt the weight of what was coming. The courtroom was full, lawyers shuffling papers, clerks glancing at their phones, and the judge, an imposing figure with eyes like a hawk, waiting for the storm to begin. Riley didn't wait. She dropped her folder on the table, slammed it with a force that rattled the pens and files around her, and fixed the judge with a stare that could cut glass. "This," she said, her voice calm but deliberate, "proves I am the co-founder of the company. Every document, every email, every conversation." Her eyes flicked to me, sharp and accusing, and she tried to erase me. She tried to take what I built. I watched her, studying the way she phrased things, the pauses, the emotion she injected. It was rehearsed but felt genuine to anyone who didn't know the truth. I swallowed hard. Noah leaned close. "She's dangerous in here. The way she spins this, it could fool people." The judge raised a hand. "Let's go through the evidence one by one." Riley smiled slightly, almost satisfied. She handed over her papers, one by one, narrating a story where she was present from day one, instrumental to every milestone, and unfairly sidelined. Her words were convincing because they weren't meant to convince me, they were meant to convince the system. When it was my turn, I spoke carefully, deliberately, leaving no room for doubt. "These documents are fabricated. This is not the truth. My signature was forged. The timeline has been altered. These claims have no legal basis." Riley's expression didn't change. She wasn't angry. She was certain, as if the universe itself had a debt to her. Hours passed. Witnesses, emails, contracts, and timestamps were dissected. Every time a shred of her narrative surfaced, she twisted it, framed it, presented it as evidence. And the courtroom, a place designed for truth, began to feel like a theater for her version of reality. The final blow came when Noah, calm and precise, presented irrefutable proof, original contracts, email headers, video meetings, timestamps, all clearly showing the truth. The judge examined them carefully. Riley's confident smile faltered slightly, just enough to show she knew, just for a moment, that the walls of her story were crumbling. The judge leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Ms. Riley, these forgeries are serious. Attempting to mislead this court has consequences." For the first time, I saw fear flash in her eyes. Not for me, not for the company, but for the narrative she had fought so hard to make real. She opened her mouth to argue, but the gavel came down before she could speak. The room exhaled collectively. Noah put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It's over," he whispered. But I knew better. Riley hadn't been stopped by a gavel or a courtroom. She had only been delayed. The obsession, the belief in her own version of justice, that was a fire that didn't burn out. As we left the courthouse, I realized something chilling. The battle wasn't just legal. It was psychological. Riley wasn't trying to win on paper. She was trying to win reality itself. And people like her don't quit. They escalate. I glanced at Noah. "This isn't over," I said. He nodded grimly. "No, it's just beginning." Because the truth isn't always enough, especially when someone has decided their version of reality is the only one that matters. And as Riley stormed out of the courthouse, I knew she wasn't just after money or recognition. She was after control. And next time, her plan wouldn't just involve forged papers, it would involve everything I thought I knew about trust, friendship, and the world I built.